for Matt. Here he is.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready? Yep, we're on the air here. Okay, welcome to our May 18, 2025 Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District meeting. And our first order of business, call this meeting to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our next order of business is to have a ceremony and swearing in our managers, just been recently appointed. And I am one of them, so I will go first in doing the oath of office. I, Bruce Loney, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Minnesota and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of manager of the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District to the best of my judgment and ability. And the next manager to be sworn in, thank you. And the next manager to be sworn in is Manager Morkenberg.
Yes, thank you. I, Christian Mørkeberg, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Minnesota, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of manager of the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations. Okay. So with that, we're going to go next to any public comment from anybody here in the audience that wishes to speak on an item that's not on their agenda. And come forward now if you wish to speak. And not seeing anybody, we're going to move on. And next item is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Manager Burnett.
Second.
Second by Manager Morkenberg. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We're going to go right now to old and new business. We're going to start off with programs and projects from staff.
All right, starting with the projects and programs. We are back in the Prior Lake City Hall, the Watershed District office. We're located in the lower level. So good to be back. We installed the lake level graphene sensor and reconnected that to our online website. So we'll be able to monitor in real time lake levels and hopefully capture this nice spring melt. Right now, Prior Lake is the only logger installed. As lakes ice off occur, we'll install equipment and sensors when available. In the monitoring and research department here, we've changed gears from winter data analysis to data collection. So we've begun installing lake and stream sensors. Camp coordination is in progress. We've got 5 lakes that we're going to be sponsoring. District staff are leading our Tier 1 lake water quality monitoring efforts this year. Typically, this was done through we typically contracted Three Rivers Park District to do our lake water quality monitoring. We will be receiving an MPCA surface water assessment grant for Fish, Spring, Upper and Lower Prior Lakes. So this is a good avenue to allow district staff to conduct the monitoring. We've begun coordination for our open water season AIS monitoring, so our boat inspections. And we collected sediment cores on Upper Prior Lake this past month. So work towards the sediment core memos is underway, and those will be presented at upcoming meetings. So carp tracking was continued. As I talked about last month, the carp have been aggregating in locations that are not where we want them to be. They've been very active, and they've transitioned from that northeastern area over toward the Seine Hall, but only for a day, and then they moved south and east or west towards the County Ditch 13 inlet. So we've been unable to conduct a under ice winter seine. So we're going to be looking for spring. We're prepared. We're watching them. They're just not cooperating. So not a good location. This just goes back to these factors, and it's always just, we got to work with all 6 of them for a successful seine, and we haven't been able to line them all up. Manager Morkenberg.
Yes, so do we have any carp barriers on the Ditch 13 inlet to Spring Lake that are in place now? Because if they are congregating there, they're probably planning to go up in the wetland areas that may already have thawed.
Yeah, all these, so there's several locations up Ditch 13, like the Tadpole Pond that we have a barrier on. Further upstream is the Desilt Pond and Bypass Weir, and then up from that is the Geis Wetland barrier. And we are talking internally about whether we, to improve spring spawning catch rates or removal rates, to allow all the carp to go through the Desilt Pond up to the Geis barrier, where removals might be more successful than what they've been in the past couple of years, where we've tried to capture them at the Desilt Pond, and that's been difficult from a removal standpoint with the gear that we have. So we're hoping that this year, if we try something different, that we can capture them at the Desilt or the Geis Wetland barrier, where part of the reason why we're doing this is because they can go over the bypass weir into the Desilt Pond regardless. So we're not losing much by changing this strategy. We're just seeing if we get a better population surge. That's it.
One question I have is, so there's quite a run before we get up to the Desilt Pond, and with a lot of cattail. And so a question I have is, do they spawn in those areas? Like, because a lot of those places are areas you can imagine they can go up into little water areas where they might spawn. And do we allow them to spawn in there? And is that an issue or not?
Manager Morkenberg, they very likely spawn in all those areas up to the Desilt Pond. And we have, because that is just open navigable water, we don't have any way to block off that area. That would be very challenging. So the seining event in the winter did not occur, though we have been working with commercial netters, and they are ready, available, and interested in open water netting. So this is a different set of commercial netters than what our typical winter seiners would be. And so we're ready as soon as ice out conditions occur. Over the past month, a big priority of ours was completing the ferric chloride NPDES permit. This stands for National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. This permit provides authorization for us to dose our ferric chloride chemical in our water treatment system. This permit sets limits and requirements. So we submitted this permit renewal last month. There's numerous requirements within this permit, including a 5-year detailed report, phosphorus loading reductions, summaries of all activities surrounding the facility, how and so industrial byproducts, which is the material that we create that enters the desilt pond. We gotta talk about, you know, how the desilt pond works, what the material looks like settling in there, where it goes when it's dredged, the projected rate of capacity use. We talk about chemical use and dosing information. This permit is what I would call the big one that really drives the state to allow us to do what we do. So this permit sets requirements for water chemistry parameters and monitoring, the frequency of reporting, which is quarterly, the residual solids management, facility requirements, and many other additional compliance efforts. So the MPCA received our permit application after one round of follow-up and determined it is complete enough for processing. So we're excited to hear that, and the permit will hopefully officially be reissued in August.
Anyone have any questions for Jeff before I take the microphone?
I had just one question. On that permit, did you tell them about all the updating we're doing on the site too? Is that included in that process?
Yep, updates, previous and future, are included.
The project we're doing now.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. With that, we've got quite a lot of projects that are picking up steam this spring, and so we'll just walk through some updates there. So the ones highlighted in red are ones we'll touch on today, and feel free to ask questions along the way. So the first update to give is just a reminder of kind of where we left the Sutton Lake Management Plan. That plan is looking at how to promote plant diversity and seeing if lake drawdown is a tool that we could use to promote some diversity. Essentially, as you can see in this photo, there's a lot of cattail that have dominated the lake, and lake drawdown can kind of offer as like a reset to plant communities. It can also not function that way. The thing with drawdowns is that to understand how they're impacting plant diversity, you need to monitor them for 5 to 10 years even before you can draw conclusions. So we have been monitoring. This will be the 3rd year. It's too early to draw conclusions, but we do have data from the 1st year to the 2nd year, and we can see what happened. It's not statistically significant in any way, but if you were to compare 2022's drone data to 2023's data, it would suggest that the cattail population has gone down roughly 10%. Other emergent vegetation, so that's any plants that come out of the water, have slightly gone up 0.3%, and we've also had an increase in open water / mudflat. Again, it's 2 years, so it's really not useful to draw conclusions, but it's just more to show you that we are continuing to monitor. The 2024 drone flight data was processed by Soil and Water into a shareable format, and then that was passed to EOR just a month ago. So we'll get that next data back and continue to give these updates, but there's no time sensitivity on that data processing because we know we're going to have to do this for several years before we know if we can link any changes to this practice. And I should mention that the drawdown that occurred prior to 2022 was a result of drought. It wasn't as a result of our management. So we just thought natural opportunity to see what happens. We do have an outlet on Sutton Lake. If it did show that it was beneficial to native plants, we could potentially apply to DNR for a permit to do that. The next project to talk about, there's a couple updates on what we have been calling the Spring West area. It's west of Spring Lake and drains in, meets up with the County Ditch 13 tributary. Two kind of projects, areas going on here. You can see there's a star on this map. There was a tile outlet. You can see in the picture here, it's buried by snow, but basically a pipe that came out into a ditch. And we had worked with a farmer to replace that pipe last year with the idea that the pipe was kind of crushed into the ditch. So we weren't able to monitor how clean is the water coming out of the pipe versus what the water it's meeting in the ditch. We replaced that pipe. We did a cost share with the farmer, and we're intending to monitor that and other water sources around the farm to just try and identify where the biggest nutrient sources were coming from. Unfortunately, something happened in the ditch that caused it to back up, and so again, the pipe was had continuous flow with the ditch, so it was impossible to differentiate. We are going to go out this year, and it's probably just a clog that we need to dig out so that we can get those distinct samples. So that is still going forward. As you know, last year we had challenges as well, just very wet and then very dry. So we weren't sure if what we were seeing was because it was so wet. It continued in the fall, and so we're going to nail that down. At the same time, that's not preventing us from working with the landowner and building some potential solutions for erosion and nutrient contribution that are happening there. So it's definitely an active partnership right now on that farm, and I'll hand it over to Danielle for the last bullet point there.
Yeah, so we have also been looking into downstream sites for water quality projects, likely iron enhanced sand filters. And we have actually been in conversation with some landowners that are downstream that are looking into next steps for their properties. So given the importance of this project for Spring Lake, we are discussing options ranging from purchasing an easement to even the entire property. Of course, any agreements or purchases would be at the approval of the board, but we wanted it to be on your radar because these things can move quickly.
Okay. The next thing to touch on is the ferric chloride building improvements. I think it was mentioned at the last meeting when we did the initial design. The shed that the tank is in is assumed to be a like prefabricated kind of kit that assembled together. So the structural engineer made assumptions about how those structures are typically built. What it looks like inside is there's kind of a metal sheet that is like the inner wall, and it kind of covers up where the structural elements are. So with a tank in there and the metal sheets up, we weren't able to see exactly where the structural C bars were. The contractor did cut in and reveal where they were, and so we did have to adjust the plans slightly. We've worked with the structural engineer to do that, architect, and adjusted the plans with the door. That did cause some delay to get those designs updated, and so right now we're functioning on a schedule that will be what's the word I'm looking for? Directed by material availability. The contractor is ready to proceed. We need the garage door to get there, and so we're waiting for an update based from the garage door company. I don't anticipate that it is going to be that long. We've met with the garage door distributor even in this redesign process. And so I don't expect it to be much longer, but the original substantial completion date was end of March. And I think it would be very unlikely that we will meet that. So we should acknowledge that our normal ferric chloride operations will start later this year, and I'll keep you in tune with how that proceeds as I know more. The driveway improvements are looking to progress quickly here. We're wrapping up insurance documentation, and their substantial completion date is still set at May 31st. We may have the pre-construction meeting with landowners as early as next week to begin that work. So that's proceeding as planned. Another update of quick movement is that we are just wrapping up contracting with our contractor in situ form who will do the pipelining for our Prior Lake outlet pipe. We held a pre-construction meeting in early March, and they intend to order the material as soon as the contracts are secured, and that will also set their schedule. So the pipelining is material is a roughly 4-week lead time. So at the most aggressive timeline, we could be pipelining in 4 weeks from now. I would say that's unlikely. We haven't signed a contract this evening, but we have noticed the initial landowners that have properties that will be accessed through and are preparing to be ready to do that as soon as we have that. As you know, we're moving into lake ice out. And so right now the lake levels are below the outlet and is not interfering with our ability to do the pipelining. We do have the ability to close the structure if needed for this project. And the way the schedule has been explained is that there will be 4 sections. The pipe will be lined in 4 sections. Each section takes roughly a long day to do, and a day of prep. And the curing takes 5 hours. And so when we move into open lake season, we'll be monitoring that and managing the lining as the lake levels allow. So for example, if we line a section and then the lake levels raise to the point where we need to use the outlet for its intended purpose, we can open that structure, allow water to go through until lake levels are at a level we feel comfortable with, close it again, do the next section. So it will be a little bit of a evolving dynamic schedule unless we have dry weather. So just wanted to give you an update on that, and much more to come as we know when the material will be available to us. That's our limiting factor right now. Any questions on those?
Any questions, managers? So it sounds like the contractor would like to get the project done this year. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, yeah, as soon as they can. Yeah, it was our initial assumptions that a contractor wouldn't want to have to be responsive to closing, opening, and breaking up the schedule like that, but this contractor seems interested in doing it as soon as they can. They also shared that they are able to do it with some moisture in the pipe, so that it changes our working assumptions as well.
Okay,
So,
that sounds good.
Yep.
It's probably, as soon as the material is available, then they might be moving in. Okay, good. If there's no other questions,
I just want to say excellent. You know, it's amazing that we can move that fast with that, and know there's a lot of preparation that's gone into that, and thank you.
all right, good job, staff. All right, we're going to move on now to approval of a new CAC member, and Danielle is going to do the introduction of this person.
Yes, so the CAC new member subcommittee, which consists of the CAC chair, the board liaison to the CAC, and the staff liaison to the CAC, myself, have interviewed Elena Spots. And it was a great interview. The subcommittee feels that Ms. Spots would be a great addition to the CAC. She's here today if she wants to come up and introduce herself.
And welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Danielle. Some of you may remember me. I spoke with my family, my young children, about 6 months ago. But I'm the type of person, put your money where your mouth is and do something about it instead of just talking. So I decided to apply for the advisory committee. It was really nice to meet. I actually attended one of the meetings and got to kind of hear what they did, and decided I wanted to pursue that. So I was able to interview and just share some of my history and some of my passions. My family and I moved to Prior Lake in 2013, and we lived just south of the Tractor Supply. We loved being on the lakes. I paddleboard regularly. We're out boating, tubing, just doing what we can. I actually trained for a mini triathlon in Prior Lake. That was a little scary. But recently we moved to Fish Lake, and so now we're kind of exploring that lake. We did a lot of fishing in the summer. We did a lot of ice fishing this winter. We actually caught a 13.6 ounce crappie, which was quite impressive. But near and dear to my heart is water. As I was telling Danielle, I was just saying, all of our vacations, it was dawning on me, revolve around water. Whenever I go somewhere, we're near a body of water because I am just so drawn to water. I grew up with a cabin on Pelican Lake up in Brainerd. So it's just the lakes and the quality of the water are really important to me. They're now very important to our family, our children who are really invested in the lake. And we hope to have our grandkids there someday and, have big family gatherings and that the lake is of a good quality where they can catch a 13.6 ounce crappie. So I'm excited to be a part of this. I'm excited to support all of the efforts. It's really interesting to hear all the different projects that are going on. And all the things that you all do behind the scenes that nobody else knows about. It seems like it's probably a thankless job, but I'm saying thank you for everything that you've done, and I'm excited to be here and to be a part of this. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? You sound like you'd be a wonderful addition to the CAC with your various lake experience, so.
Thank you.
Okay, and well, we need a motion to approve the appointment of Elena Spots to the district CAC.
So moved.
Motion made by Manager Tofinelli,
Second?
second by Manager Morkenberg. Any more discussion on the motion?
No, I just also wanted to welcome you and good luck. Good luck learning about all the things that the CAC does, and look forward to hearing your advice and
Thank you.
recommendations.
Thank you. I shared with them, I've been marching on Capitol Hill for the last 8 years, so I have a lot of experience meeting with Congress and Senate and talking about my causes, and I've just always been very involved, so it feels very natural, but I'm excited. This is a new one for me.
Wow, very good. Any other comments? Everybody? Okay. Assume you guys are ready to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Welcome.
Thank you.
Board.
I appreciate it.
All right. Sounds wonderful. Okay, next we're going to go to item 6.3, 2024 Aquatic Plant Survey Results. And Jeff, you want to do any introduction or not?
Yep. You can up to the front. Yeah. Oh, it's over there. Connor McComas with Blue Water Science has led many of the delineations and surveys in 2024. Connor helped write and create the reports for each of our lakes that were surveyed. And Blue Water Science has been a consultant of the districts for many, many years, providing expertise in aquatic plants and helps us with our treatment delineations, planning, and all this information gives data to the district to help manage our water bodies. So,
All right, I think I'm mic'd up now. Thank you very much. So we're going to get into some of the surveys done in 2024. I'm going to try to be pretty brief and move through quickly. If there's any questions, please don't hesitate to raise them. So here's just kind of a base map of showing some of the locations of the lakes sampled in 2024. And like I was saying, we were kind of doing a number of things. Firstly, we're assessing the invasive aquatic species in the lake. Aquatic invasive species, AIS, are kind of a factor in some of these lakes. So we're checking for curly-leaf pondweed mainly. We're also looking at Eurasian water milfoil in some of the lakes as well. If there's going to be a treatment, we would come back and assess both how the treatment was done, if it was satisfactory, good, or bad, as well as seeing if we had missed any spots. So I'll also talk a little bit about some point intercept survey data. So starting off with curly-leaf here in Fish Lake. For a number of years now in Fish Lake, the curly-leaf pondweed has been reduced, and there has not been a treatment done in, I believe, 23 or 24 at least. So that lake is on an improving trend, fewer treatments, generally more aquatic plants in the lake as well. Moving on to Spring Lake. In 2024, curly-leaf was growing in a kind of a broad area, kind of in the southwest part of the lake. About 19 acres was circled up for treatment, and upon post-treatment, we found that control was relatively good. There was no nuisance growth. Curly-leaf was under control. And we know, as going back a number of years, Spring Lake has a history of being pretty widespread curly-leaf pondweed growth. But as we've kind of progressed into the 2000s, mid-2000s, slightly reduced. And then as we get into kind of the last 15 years or 10 to 15 years here, we are kind of getting these hotspot areas where curly-leaf is growing persistently over the years. And we're still working on controlling that to get those turions, the seeds, under control. And if we can really control those seeds, curly-leaf will be less of a factor. So just summarizing some of the treatments over the years in Spring Lake. Some years there's been more treatments than others, but we've had a trend for about the past 5 years of these kind of stable beds of curly-leaf pondweed. Still getting at that. A lot of lakes still have these curly-leaf pondweed issues.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Which year was the harvesting done at Spring Lake? Was it 2007 or 2006, or when did they? You had a slide that said harvesting. I think they treated it and then they did harvesting.
Yes, this was kind of in the mid to early 2000s, where we were kind of experimenting, I believe, with both approaches a little bit. Once we started to get to an acreage where harvesting kind of became a challenge, however, it is still a valid option in a lot of circumstances. I don't necessarily have those dates, the data points with harvesting, although on this chart here, it does show in 2002 and 2003 that harvesting was conducted, denoted with an H in the treatment column.
The reason why I'm asking is, first of all, the CAC, one of their projects they are starting to work on is potential harvesting and the pros and cons of that. And then also, if you saw they did the harvesting here, And I was looking at, there was like a 5-year, 8-year period where there were no treatments on Spring Lake. And
Yes.
so I was just wondering if it had anything, could have anything to do with harvesting where you remove the seeds so they are not there. But, so that's a question.
That's a good question, too. Another potential correlation is we were looking at how the ferric chloride might have impacted curlyleaf. Now, we don't have any necessarily causal relationships there, but there is a correlation with the ferric chloride injection site and reduced curlyleaf in the lake. And once that was kind of diverted, curlyleaf appeared to come back a little bit. Now, I'm not very familiar with that ferric chloride system, but there's an interesting correlation there to me. That's a good, interesting point with the harvesting too. If we can time that harvesting correctly, it is going to be just as effective as any chemical treatments. And by the timing, I mean before it is produced and dropped its seed turions. It can be an effective approach. Also, when there's a chance that when you cut curlyleaf at a certain height, it will not grow back. But this is similar to corn, how corn grows. If you were to leave a node, it'll still grow. But however, there's a limit to cutting it and the curlyleaf not continuing to grow as well. So those are some interesting kind of components in there. I think, me personally, I believe that harvesting is kind of underutilized tool, especially for smaller locations, smaller infestations. So we're still on Spring Lake here, but we're switching gears to Eurasian water milfoil. Just kind of review what has happened over the past couple of years. I want to kind of continue to keep my pace up a little bit here, though. So Spring Lake, we had first found an infestation of Eurasian water milfoil. Upon inspection, we had found it a lot kind of spread throughout the west portion of the lake. We had attempted hand removal, and we've also hit it with herbicides there. So in 2022, we found a new pocket. Our control was good on the western portion of the lake, but we were finding some new sites on the kind of, I forget what bay that's called. It is, but as on the map here, you can see kind of some red dots. So that was treated, we had good control, and that spot did not come back in 2023. However, in 23, we had a little bit more Eurasian milfoil on the western portion of Spring Lake. But again, these are light growth to moderate growth areas. And finally, in 2024, we did not have a lot of milfoil, but what we did have was light growth and sporadic single-stemmed growth. So it's interesting that we don't have a big invasion pulse coming from Eurasian, as is sometimes typical from new invasions. But I do believe that the Spring Lake Association, along with the watershed, has been monitoring and keeping an eye on the milfoil, tracking it as we go on. It'll be interesting in 2025 to see what happens with that. Onto the Prior Lakes, Upper and Lower Prior Lake. So here we have a map from 2024 showing the locations of curlyleaf that was found, as well as the treatment areas. In 2024, we proposed 29.5 acres about of curlyleaf treatments. That was done in early May. It was or before May 1. 2024 was a very interesting year in terms of the weather patterns that had set up. Now, on the post-treatment here, we did not find very good control of our curlyleaf pondweed. A lot of the areas that were treated were not 100% effective. Some were satisfactory, some may have been poor. So again, it was a challenging year to both delineate curlyleaf pondweed. It was growing. We had to delineate early, and the curlyleaf was continuing to kind of come in and grow. It was an early season. The ice was out early. It was an early spring, and it was kind of a unique year. There are also some areas in Upper Prior that we did not delineate that came in rather strong. For example, in that this southwestern basin is typically a hot spot in the Prior Lakes. Here's kind of the typical known locations for Prior Lake curlyleaf pondweed. These are spots that have been treated a number of years, and we're still getting curlyleaf pondweed. However, and as you can kind of see, the treatment areas over the years have been variable as well. So we have a number of treatment, we have kind of the treatment history here for the upper and lower Prior Lake together here. And this does not include homeowner individual treatments. These are open water treatments, typically sponsored by the watershed district. Milfoil in the Prior Lakes was significantly down in 2024 when we were out there. 2023 seemed to be a large year for Eurasian milfoil, and for whatever reason, weather patterns, cycles, it did not come in very strong. So I'm going to continue to keep my pace going here as best as I can. We're going to go over some of the point intercept surveys here, starting with Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake is a pretty smallish lake. It has two kind of basins to it. One is more of a shallow basin, one is kind of a deeper basin. In 2024, we did find a number of plant species, 6 submerged species, 2 floating leaf species. Coontail was the dominant species. Very pretty lake with fishing opportunities, paddling opportunities, good paths, and good native plants around the lake there. And here we're back to Fish Lake. So we did the curly leaf pondweed delineation, and then we came back and did a full point intercept survey. Fish Lake, I believe, is on kind of an improving pattern in terms of water quality in plants. Now, it's not drastically improving, but we are seeing an increase in aquatic plants, increase in where they are, the depth they are growing out to, and a few more diverse spots in the lake than in previous. I think is a good sign going forward. The Jeffers Pond Complex, this is dealing with upper and lower Jeffers Pond, were sampled. A very pretty lake, lots of great habitat. The lower basin had a significant amount of Eurasian water milfoil growing throughout the lake. It was most common statistically. However, the heaviest growing plant was coontail in the lake. This is kind of like a very unique system where upper lake is flowing into the lower lake. It has good habitat, good wildlife. It has another kind of rare plant, American lotus lily. Very kind of unique system there. So we're going over to Lower Prior Lake, which we had conducted a 100-meter grid over the lake, and we did a point intercept survey in 2024. The number of species that were sampled was 18 for submerged species. This is a pretty good species diversity for the lakes. As you can see, on the right here is a map of the species richness, and on the left side there's some tables showing plant surveys from the previous years. And now for both Lower Prior and Upper Prior Lake, we've seen good increases across the board in terms of the number of submerged species, the max depth of plant colonization, as well as the percent coverage of the entire lake. So since 2015, we on both Upper and Lower Prior, we are on a trend of increasing our plant mass, which is a good proxy for overall water quality and the health of the lake as well. So I would say we are on a very good trend there. Plants are growing deeper and deeper, the diversity is getting better, and we're having more overall plant colonization. Good thing for helping to maintain water quality in those lakes. I think the watershed has really done good work with across the board with internal things and external things. You know, the fish internal and the watershed as well. It's been good to see that. It's been fun to do those surveys because of how the plant community is really adapting to the conditions out there. So Pike Lake was another lake that we had conducted a point intercept survey. Interesting little thing about Pike Lake, I believe it was 8 years ago that they had their first initial finding of Eurasian water milfoil on the lake. However, in 2024, after an extensive survey, we did not find a single stem of Eurasian water milfoil, which is surprising to me because over the years, the frequency of occurrence of milfoil has ranged from about 16% to about 64% of the entire lake for milfoil. So to not find any milfoil was a kind of a notable observation out there. Other than that, the water quality is so-so, and this plant diversity is fairly low. It would be nice to have a few more plant species out there to kind of fill out the canopy within the water column, but the lake, I think, is doing fine for right now. Swamp Lake was kind of the last one here, where a PI was done, as we say, a point intercept. This is a kind of more of a shallow lake. It has plants growing throughout the whole basin, very low algae, a lot of aquatic plants, lots of ducks, so there's a pair of swans out there, good habitat overall, even some rare, I was anecdotally noticing some rare native pennywort plant, it's called. But some nice habitat, some good buffer around the lake as well. So just kind of to summarize, some CLP, or curly leaf pondweed growth, has been variable but consistent in the same areas for the most part. Fish Lake is one of the few lakes that we have not had to do a curly leaf pondweed. We've conducted curly leaf treatments there, but in the past years we have not had to treat. So that is a good trend to see for Fish Lake. While Eurasian water milfoil in Prior Lake has been up and down, we are currently on a cycle of downward trend for 2024, and I would presume in 2025 as well. And while plant diversity in Spring Lake was a new high in 2023, we had a little bit of a setback in 2024, but we'll continue to monitor the plants and water quality out there as well. I think that's all I had for today. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this report? Christian?
Yes, first of all, thank you for the hard work you're doing out there. It's fun. I've been with you or with your dad a few times to do it. So a question I have is, Lower Prior Lake had a 42% plant growth, I think, in the shallower areas. What was it for Upper Prior Lake and Spring Lake, the percentage in 2024?
That's a great question.
And maybe you don't know.
I don't have that information with me. I did not include it on this slide, and I should have done a table similar to this.
Okay.
But we've had great point intercepts, consistent trend of point intercepts out there, and overall, up through 2023, we had an increasing trend. In 2024, we had a kind of a setback in terms of the plant colonization depth, as well as the species diversity. And that was probably likely due to a just slightly reduced water quality over the course of the season.
Yeah, so for Spring Lake, there was a decrease in water quality in 2024, and so that correlates with the decreased plant growth.
Yes, and I can get some information over to you if you'd like with that report as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the managers? Oh. And it sounds like we're going to get a more detailed written report.
That's correct. I have sent reports over to the watershed district for each individual lake at this time.
Yep, okay, that'd be good.
Manager Loney, those reports are now on the website.
They're on the website now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and very good. Another good report for another year. And I see we have something else on the agenda from, is that correct, from Blue, an aquatic vegetation survey contract with Blue Earth Science, I think, it's on the consent agenda. Okay, well, thank you, Connor. Say hi to your dad for me. Okay. All right, next we're going to go to item 6.4, authorization to proceed with its petition for swamp enhanced filter, and this will be a vote. And I believe Emily's going to do the presentation.
That's correct. I am bringing this forward. It's slight project update on the swamp iron enhanced sand filter as well. We have progressed, we're at 60% design reviewed by staff for the swamp iron enhanced sand filter. We are still hoping to progress and see if we can get it out to bid this spring. With 90% design, that'll be coming at a future board meeting. But one of the things that we have to do in preparation for construction is to go through the ditch petition process. And so we've been working with Scott County, who is the ditch authority, throughout the development of this project, including early on in the feasibility study. So they're well in step with us. What that looks like is we submit an application, and depending on how they choose to process it, the decision to approve our application for the project could be approved in one meeting. There's a public hearing period where they review and notice the public. That's about 60 days. So we're looking at maybe a hearing 2 months out from now-ish. But what we would like to do is to get board support, board approval, a motion to authorize us proceeding with the ditch petition process for the swamp iron enhanced sand filter project. Thus far, we've received really positive feedback from Scott County, the ditch authority, and so we don't anticipate it to be problematic.
That's it?
That's it, unless there are any questions.
Okay. Questions? Anybody? Manager Morkenberg, you look like you're ready for a question, or?
Well, I would move to proceed with authorization for the ditch petition for the Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter.
Okay, that's a motion by? Second. And seconded by Manager Boyle. Any more questions or discussion on the motion? I have just one comment. If we had control of this ditch, this wouldn't be really a petition then, would it?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. Okay. Just, not that I'm saying we want it, but it's just, the process would be easier. Okay, no more questions, comments? You ready to vote? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. I think that takes us to the treasurer's report with Manager Morkenberg.
Yes, thank you, President Loney. Our financial report and cost analysis, the activity reflected in the general fund and the implementation fund is consistent where we would expect to be this time of year. Also, when you look at the cash flow analysis, you can see that we have adequate cash flow to cover upcoming expenditures, and that importantly includes the potential pipelining construction costs, which we have to cover until we receive the grant fund, and also until we receive the tax settlement funds for the first half of the year. So we have anticipated that, and thanks to the good work of our staff, it may be that we'll have to come up with the cash very soon, and we should be ready. If we look to compared to last year, our general fund expenditures are slightly less. On the other hand, the implementation fund expenditures are going up, and more than double than last year, but that is reflecting the increase in the project activity that's occurring in the district. So again, thanks to our great staff and getting moving on projects. So this is a good thing. We are paying consultants more, we are paying vendors more, but this is why we are here. These are going to good projects. So that's the end of my report. Any questions?
Okay. Yeah, I like what you're tracking our cash flow, because it sounds like a couple of our projects might be coinciding with each other, and so we'll have to watch the cash flow. Each project's a little different as far as when we can get money from the agencies on those grants, but we look like we're looking good.
Yeah, yes, we are in good standing now. And we also, as you can see, we got new printed formats for our tables, which makes them a little bit easier to read, which I think is a good idea. So thank you. There's a lot of details when you dive into it.
There is.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments, questions on the treasury report? Thank you, Christian.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Yep.
All right, we're going to move now to the consent agenda, and we have 8 items on our consent agenda. I'll read them. First of all, is there any item that needs to be taken off the consent agenda by any staff or board members? Okay. First of all, I think we should have a motion then to approve the consent agenda. Moved by Manager Tofinelli,
Second.
second by Manager Boyle. Okay, so I'll read the consent agenda before we vote. The meeting minutes of January 21, 2025 board workshop and also the board meeting. Claims list and bank purchase card expenditure summary. Resolution 25392, which is the PLOC memo of agreement emergency fund interest transfer that we do annually. And Resolution 25393, amending the 2025 budget to reflect the Bowser grant agreement for the Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter project. Resolution 25394, amending the 2025 budget to establish the Buck Stream Stabilization Project budget item in the amount of $7,500. This is really a carryover from last year's budget. And 8.7 is 2025 boat inspection contract, and then 8.8 is 2025 aquatic vegetation survey contract. That is our consent agenda for tonight, and there's a motion made in second. Cannot have any discussion on consent. Is all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And Manager Boyles is going to give us the upcoming meeting and event schedule. You're on.
Thank you. Something to look forward to. I appreciate that. Our upcoming meetings include the following. Our PLOC Cooperators Meeting, Prior Lake Outlet Channel Meeting, in other words, is coming up Thursday, March 27th at noon in the Parkview Conference Room, which is right across the City Council chambers. Our Community Action Committee also meets Thursday, March 27th, 6 p.m., but that meeting will be downstairs in the Wagon Bridge Conference Room. It's larger, the 2 rooms down there. The Board of Managers will conduct a workshop Tuesday, April 15th, 4 p.m., here at City Hall as well, and once again in Parkview Conference Room. And finally, the Board of Managers meeting will also take place Tuesday, 15th, in here, commencing at 6 p.m. That is the meetings for the upcoming month.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. Good. And that concludes our meeting. We're up to a motion to adjourn. Oh, something else? Oh, I thought somebody else. Okay, you were just pointing at the clock, huh? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Manager Tofinelli.
Second.
Second by Manager Burnett. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 7:11. Good night, everybody.
Less than an hour.
That's also a
We
gamble.
started at 6:12.
It's significant. for
I'm
gambling
predicting we'd be done in an hour.
Yeah.
Hey, where's our, are you gonna get paid $125 or $40 or nothing?